And welcome to T0 Endurance Webinar Series. We have a great guest today, Dave McGillivray.
Hey,
how are you doing, Rob? I'm doing great. We were talking a little before this and the challenging times that are about us right now and how everything is going. Tell me, what are you doing right now while you're having to stay at home?
Well, having been in the endurance industry for 40 years, I've been fortunate enough to build a business, producing and consulting on mass participatory athletic events, triathlons and road races, marathons, walks and whatnot. And unfortunately, with this pandemic, God bless all those folks who are on the front line and people who are profoundly impacted by it. But those of us in this particular industry of putting on events, this pandemic has really done some serious damage and flies right in the face of what it's all about. My job is to get as many people as I can find and jam them into a small space, yell go, and they run down the road and cough on each other and spit on each other and sweat and everything. And that's exactly what they don't want us to do. And as a result, all my events from March, April, May, June, July, and August have basically gone over the cliff. And now I'm into September, and who knows, September, October, November, what's gonna be saved and what's gonna go. So how have I been spending my time? Really mitigating the business side of things. So it's been disappointing, but I know that at the end of the day, we'll get through this and we'll come out on the other side stronger as a result. And I'm really anticipating that, I see so many people out there running now and walking and cycling that I didn't even know existed in my neighborhood. So I think that there's going to be somewhat of a silver lining in all of this for us in our sport, but it might not be for a while.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you've been in this sport so long and you understand the power of this sport and, the power of the Boston Marathon. Deb Taylor said that she's going to see in September 14th. 14th. And Margaret Riley also said hi.
Nice.
And the power of the Boston Marathon. Tell me more about the history of that, because you've not only been there as a race director since 2001, but in 1973, at 18 years old, you participated in it. So you've been around 3/4 of your life has been with the Boston Marathon. So what is the power behind it?
Well, I'm currently the race director, as you know, and I really look at myself more as, a conductor, because we have such a great team and they are the musicians and I'm just kind of trying to help keep it all together. But I also, for me, I'm a caretaker, because it was here way before I was around and it'll be here way after I'm gone. And I'm just trying to help take care of it for a while. Right. So, but it's the longest consecutive running marathon in the world. People consider it the Holy Grail. The Mecca, the place, the bucket list event. When we instituted qualifying standards back in 1970, mainly to control the field size, we got up to a whopping 1,300 runners, and the BAA was like, "Whoa, this is way too many. We have to somehow, put a cap on this thing." And the way they thought they could cap it was to impose, at the time, a standard. It was 4 hours, but what it did is just the opposite. It made people more hungry to want to beat the standard. So, the strategy of imposing qualifying standards to lower the field size did just the opposite, right? So now, the running world looks at Boston as being, the Super Bowl, the Tour de France, the Kentucky Derby, the World Series of our industry. And for me, that's a daunting task to sort of deliver on that level of expectation of all these people from around the world. For me, when I jumped, unfortunately, I have to say I was abandoned because there were no qualifying standards per se. but it was more, you got to be 18 years old, and I was 17 in 1972. So I jumped in and I got to the hills in Newton and collapsed and got taken to the Newton Wellesley Hospital in an ambulance. And as the story goes, I vowed to come back and earn the right and train real hard. And I was able to finish, the 1973 Boston Marathon. And then I said, I'm going to run this race every year for the rest of my life. And I've run it for the last 47 years. In fact, we postponed, as you know, this year's marathon to September, but last Patriots Day would have been my 48th consecutive Boston. But even though I couldn't run the course and we didn't have the race, I still ran a marathon Monday morning, Patriots Day, in my neighborhood. And so because I've run a marathon on Patriots Day for the last 47 years, I had nothing else going on. I might as well go run a marathon, and was able to get it done. So I feel good about that.
And you have a vast history, not just in triathlon, but in endurance sports. And you competed in 1980 in the Ironman World Championships, and you've done 9 total Ironman Konas. What is the mindset to be able to do these things? And we're going to get into some of the other things that you've done that I don't know if you can even quantify what kind of mindset you need to get into. But what is the mindset that you have to get into to be able to complete those?
Well, I have a motivational speech. It's called Defining Moments. And in all of our lives, every one of us experience defining moments where some are good and some are not so good. And it's all how you respond to them. And for me, I go back to when I was a young kid growing up, and I always wanted to be one thing, and that was an athlete. But I was short in stature, so I was always the last one picked and the last one cut when I went out for team sports. And, at the young age of 13, 14, 15, it taught me about that one pain that's really tough to overcome, especially children, and that is rejection. And I just said, I'm not going to be denied. I want to be an athlete. So I started running, because nobody can cut you from running, right? So, and I've run about 150,000 miles since then. I've run 157 miles, done 9 Ironman, and done all these other crazy things. And for me, it's more just, I've always wanted to challenge myself. And I, back in the 70s, I think our industry was, in the 60s, was more about competition, and it was just, most other people other than hardcore runners were intimidated by this. And then the walls of intimidation crumbled, and people started believing in themselves, and then philanthropy entered the sport. And then all of a sudden it just took off. And the way I look at it now is, when people ask me, what do I do for a living as a race director? I mean, initially I mumbled, I'm a race director, and they're like, what the heck is that? What do you do? Chalk mark in the road and yell, go? And I said, yeah, I guess back then. And now when people ask me, what do I do for a living? I say, I help raise the level of self-esteem and self-confidence of tens of thousands of people in America. Because that's what these things do.
That's exactly right.
That's what they do. And that's why people do them. It's, when I ask people who never run a race before, I say, what the toughest part about running a race is? Signing the application. Once you sign the application, you're committed. As long as you have the guts to do that. Then you have to earn the right. And then by training, then you toe the line, you answer the gun, you run the course, you cross the finish line, you get a medal, and magic happens. You go home feeling good about yourself. And there's nothing more powerful in the world than feeling good about yourself. It's the very foundation by which we accomplish anything in our lives. And that's why I think I continue to run. It makes me feel good about myself. Yeah, there are a lot of other benefits to it, health and fitness and social and everything, but once I'm done with my run, my workout for the day, I'm ready for the rest of the day. And if I don't do my workout first thing in the morning, then, all day long, I'm like, when am I going to get out there? When am I going to get out there? It's like, so it really has a really amazing motivational effect on you.
That's so true. And you're talking about philanthropic aspects of the endurance sports. And you look back to 1980, when you ran across America. And you did it for such a great cause, the Jimmy Fund, and also for Dana-Farber, correct?
Yeah.
And what was that feeling? In 1980, what you were 20, what is it, 26, 25,
23.
23,
23.
23. So you look at a 23-year-old, how did you choose to be that philanthropic and then push the limits that far?
Well, I was working in the John Hancock Tower in Boston at the time, and I looked out the window and I saw Fenway Park. And that's where I always wanted to be as an athlete, second base, Boston Red Sox, right there, and I couldn't have it.
Yeah.
So, and I saw a sign out in right field and it said, "Help make a dream come true, support the Jimmy Fund." And I thought, and I called up the Jimmy Fund and found out what it was all about. And I went in and visited with the kids. And I knew at the time that the battle that I was about to fight by running over 5.5 million footsteps across America was in no way as difficult as a battle that these kids are fighting for their life. And so I just knew that I wanted to tie my run into helping these sick kids. And I remember reading an article in Runner's World a number of years ago, and they said, it was actually in 1978, and they said that 1978 run, when I did it to raise money for cancer research, was the first time someone had combined running with raising money for cancer research, before team and training and Live Strong and all that kind of stuff. So I didn't even know I was helping to pioneer tying philanthropy into what we do, for a passion. But yeah, I ran from Medford, Oregon to my hometown of Medford, Mass, averaging, 45, 50 miles every day for 80 consecutive days. And I actually ended up finishing inside Fenway Park in front of 32,000 people. And certainly the highlight of my athletic career. And that's what gave me the confidence to set other goals, not limits, and move on to the next one. Because people ask me all the time, well, what's your best accomplishment? And, I always say my best accomplishment is my next one. Like, what do you got for me lately?
I love that, because your next accomplishment, you didn't stop at just going across America. I like the one from 1982 where you incorporated triathlon into the craziest adventure that could ever take on the East Coast. Tell me more about that one.
Well, again, I started my business by doing triathlons. I did the 1980 Hawaii Ironman. There was only 108 of us. I had read about it in the May 1979 issue of Sports Illustrated, and I had just finished running across the country the year before. So, of course, I'm thinking I'm invincible. I'm Superman. I can do anything. And I read about the Ironman, and I said, I'm going to do that. Well, I had two problems. One is I didn't know how to swim, and two is I didn't even own a bike. And I said, I better get my act together here. So I did, and went over to Oahu. At the time, and there was 108 of us. Dave Scott won the race. Bob Babbitt was there, and John Howard, and all these guys that I met for the first time. And when I came back, I said, "Geez, that was unbelievable. I want to produce, triathlon here in New England." And so I did a local triathlon called the Bay State, and then I did an Ironman distance one called the Cape Cod Endurance Triathlon on Cape Cod, and developed an New England Triathlon Series, and just went crazy with triathlon. So my life was all triathlon at that time. And then I said, what's my next personal adventure? And I said, well, I'm a triathlete now, not just a runner. So I decided to triathlon around New England. So I swam a mile every day, biked 80, and ran 20 every single day for 35 consecutive days. So it's like 3/4 of an Ironman every day for 35 days. And some of my runs, and running up and down Mount Washington was part of it, or swimming across Lake Winnipesaukee, or swimming from Woods Hole to Martha's Vineyard. And I finished that run at halftime of a New England Patriot football game in front of 60,000 people. And again, raise money for charity doing that too.
I love those stories. I mean, because that's really what this endurance sport community is about, is pushing the limits and finding those new opportunities. And I'm sure you have numerous stories that you love about the Boston Marathon. But if you had to pick one that would really motivate people in this challenging time, what would be one of those stories that you would say?
Well, obviously, having been involved in the marathon as a runner or a director for 80% of the time I've been on this planet, it's hard to pick one. I mean, I've been part of so many amazing stories, not me, but other people's stories. Meb winning in 2014, the comeback year, and I was riding a motorcycle beside him the whole way, stuff like that. But the one that resonates with me the most is this one really quick. It's this, I got a phone call once from this woman. She said, "Hi, Dave, my name's Katie. Can I come see you at the marathon office?" I said, "Sure." And she come in, and I won't deny anyone the opportunity to meet with me. And, I'll return every call, every email. I'm no better than anyone else. So she came in and she was in a wheelchair. I was like, wow. Okay. So she went into the conference room and I went in after her and I looked across the table and my jaw dropped. And Katie was 36 inches tall. And she looked at me and she says, "I have a question to ask you." I said, "What's that?" She says, "Can I run the marathon?" I said, "You want to run the marathon?" She says, "Yeah, I want to run the marathon." And I thought for a minute and I said, "Ask me a difficult question." She said, "I can?" I said, "Yeah, you can run. I can run the marathon." I said, "Yeah, you can run it." She said, "Well, I have a caveat." And I said, "What's that?" She says, "My marathon's 26.2 feet. I said, "Okay, 26.2 feet, fine." She trained like the Dickens for this thing. And, she went through 35 operations at Children's Hospital, the whole bit. But her dream was to run the Boston Marathon. And so she came out to the start that year in her wheelchair. She get out of her wheelchair and she get in a walker and I yelled, "Go." I barricaded 26.2 feet. There's 20,000 athletes watching this, helicopters flying, media from all over the world. And here goes Katie, right, in her walker. And she did it in like 7.5 minutes. Wow. And I put a laurel wreath on her head and a medal around her neck, gave her a big hug. And, it's interesting that so I run the marathon now after everyone's done. And 9 hours later, I was finishing my marathon running down Boylston Street. And I looked in the distance and there's one person in the dock waiting for me. And it's little Katie in her wheelchair. And I finished and she put a laurel wreath on my head that she made and a medal around my neck that she made. Wow. And she looked up at me and she goes, "Ha, I beat you." And I'll never forget it because I have a motto in life and it's my game. So it's my rules. Well, it's her game, her rules. And she died like 6 months later, but at least I felt like I had a part in her being able to run the Boston Marathon her way. So it's moments like that. I mean, the great athletes who set world records and stuff, that's inspiring too. But it's stories like that that really resonate and mean the most to me. And I've experienced a lot of them.
That speaks volumes to you being in the industry that long to understand the little things like that. That's a credit to you because those stories don't come about without individuals understanding the bigger picture. And that's the bigger picture.
It is.
Definitely. Hey, I have to ask you because you have such good wisdom here. What is one of your favorite quotes?
Well, right now, sometimes quotes are specific to the time you're living in. And my favorite quote right now is, "The comeback is always stronger than the setback." And that's what I think we're going to experience here. When the bombs went off in 2013, tragedy ensued, obviously. And it was interesting. The next day, I was speaking to some of the winner of the race, but some of the elite athletes, and they were like questioning whether or not they were ever going to come back because they felt like this place is dangerous, right? And then a couple of weeks passed and we started recovering and whatnot. And then the opposite happened, right? The demand to come back, we will persevere, we're resilient. Those perpetrators mess with the wrong crowd. And all of a sudden we had a big task of like, how do we manage all this interest, and the demand was off the charts, and then we came back. It was epic. Meb wins, has the names of the 4 victims on his bib and the whole bit. And it's a perfect example of how the comeback was stronger than the setback. And I just think that we're in that now, there's a little setback here, folks, and we're living it. And all of us are. It isn't just bombs in Boston. This thing is worldwide. So now everyone sort of can experience and is experiencing this challenge. And we're all going to have to put our big boy pants on and say, we're going to get through this, right? And not be denied running freedom. And we'll be back. I mean, as much as I said, my business has taken a hit, the one thing that runners and triathletes or whatever should be thinking about is the fact that our passion has not been taken away from us. We can go out every day and go run. Whereas other people, whether it's baseball players or football players or hockey players or whoever, business people, anyone, they can't do what they love to do, and we can continue to do it. So be glad and feel blessed that you're able to do that. And that's why I think we're going to come back a lot stronger than the way we sort of left it. That's sort of one of my favorite quotes right now.
I love it because it speaks directly to the endurance athlete, and it also speaks to a story about you as well. After doing the World Marathon Challenge, it wasn't because of the World Marathon Challenge like we talked about, but you had a health setback that kind of took you back. And reading the story, that you kind of felt ashamed of it at first, but then you want to have your story be more powerful to other people. Just like you were saying, it's the resilience. And so tell me about what happened after that World Marathon Challenge. You had some discomfort in your chest, and then what happened?
Well, just to bring you up to that really quick, is in 2013, that was a bad year. Bombs going off and everything else. I could feel some discomfort in my chest when I was running. And anyways, I went and got checked, and I had every test known to man, and the doctors all said the same thing. You're fine. We couldn't find anything. And I said, I'm not fine. I can't breathe when I'm exercising. So I said, you got to give me the big boy test and look under the hood. And so they did a CAT scan angiogram, and the doctor comes in and he says, there, and there. I said, there what? He said, you have severe coronary artery disease. I said, how can I? Have done all this running and triathlon. And he said, I don't know how, but you do. And, genetics, maybe self-inflicted, maybe you broke some rules. And I said, I have one question to ask you. And he said, what? I said, is this reversible? He said, well, it depends. I said, depends on what? He said, depends on the person. I said, well, you're looking at him. I'm right here. He said, you with your discipline, I think you can have an impact on your own illness. And I said, well, sign me up. And that's when I went on a tear, and I changed my diet, my nutrition, my sleep habits. I always thought sleep was overrated, stress and everything else. And that's when I went back and did the Ironman in Hawaii. And right before I went, I wrote to the Ironman. I said, can I do this again? And they said, yeah, but you got to get a note from your doctor. I'm like, get a note from I've never got a note from my doctor. I had to, because, they didn't want me to go down in the, in the lava field. So I had another angiogram again, and I reversed my own severe coronary artery disease by over 40%. So I thought I was out of the woods. And so I was hammering. I just had turned 60, and I was winning my age group in triathlons and running and everything, and I was fine. And then 2017 came, and I got the opportunity to do the World Marathon Challenge, and I went and I did it. When I got back from it, I could feel the discomfort a little bit again. I said, son of a gun, this thing didn't come back, did it? And it sure did. And so it was 6 months before the Boston Marathon, and I turned to my heart surgeon and I said, I have one question to ask you. And he said, what? I said, well, there's this little jogathon in April in Boston. I've shuffled through it a couple of times. What do you think? And he gave me the best possible answer. He didn't say, no, you can't do it, or yes, you can. He said, I'd be extremely disappointed if you couldn't. That gave me what all of us want in life. And what that was hope. And that's what we're working on right now, is hope that this thing is going to go away and we're going to be stronger and better for it. And that's how I felt. I needed hope because I needed something to go after. So I had to go through this delicate balance of recovery and don't overdo it and get myself ready to run a marathon. And I only had 6 months to do it. So for the first month of the 6 months, I was in a reclining chair. I mean, I was moving my hands. That was not my legs. And then eventually started walking a mile, and then walking 2 miles, and then jog. And, just kind of eventually got to the point where the furthest I had run before the marathon was like a half marathon. And I said, well, I hope I can hold it together, but I'm going to give this a go. And I did. And I finished my 47th Boston Marathon that evening.
Wow. And 5 hours and 42 minutes?
That's
not shabby. That's not shabby after a triple bypass. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, I mean, that was a combination of, obviously I didn't have a lot of time to get real fit, but it was also a cautious run. Like, I never want people to think, that I'm a fool, that I'm putting road racing and running and triathlon ahead of my family and my life. And I know my body so well that I know what I can get away with and what I can't. And I really felt like I was in a safe place.
Right.
But I had to back off, because if you push it, then, you're going to be a dead hero here, right? So I didn't want to be that, So I just took my timing. It was the slowest marathon I've ever run, but at least it was the most memorable. And,
but even a perspective of what you do, because at 3 a.m. that day, you got up and started doing your race director,
my job,
your hat of race director. And then at 4 p.m. that day, that's when you were able to start. So you had already worked 20 hours and now you went, I mean, that's pretty amazing in itself.
Yeah, and it was an awful day, the rain and the whole bit, and being out in that weather, and I was just losing all my energy, and so I've been on my feet for like 12 hours, and then you're about to run a marathon, right? And so but I've been doing that. At night, I've done it 32 years in a row. I've been the last finisher of the Boston Marathon for the last 32 years.
That's good.
And I'm proud of it. That's okay. I don't mind being last.
I'm always the last finisher, so I feel you. So, I guess you mentioned it before, the beacon of hope. And I love that idea of the beacon of hope, that it's going to happen this year. But yet, if it doesn't happen this year, next year, like you said, it's probably going to be one of the biggest and most powerful messages that it can happen. For all those athletes that are training to do either, whether it's a triathlon or a road race this year, that are not able to do it, or that, it's their first time and they're, a little disappointed, what would you say to those people with all of your vast experience?
Well, a lot of times I'll get up on the starters platform to run it, all my races, and I'll say, hey, listen, you might have a great performance and you might not meet your goals, but just be thankful that, you're out here, and that all of us here, I don't even know any of you, but all of us, we have one thing in common. You know what that is? We woke up this morning. Not everyone else did. And you didn't have a lot to do with it. But what happens in the rest of the day is in your hands to make the most of it. Every day's a gift. So, it's funny because sometimes I'm standing at the finish line of the marathon and I'm high-fiving people and I say, hey, Joe, how'd you do? Well, I did okay. My hip and my knee, I shouldn't have stopped for the burger and the beer and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wait a minute. You just ran a marathon. Can't you just grab it and take it and appreciate it? And not every race is going to be a PR and set the world on fire. Just the fact that you got through probably a really challenging, hard race. It's funny. The PR ones, those are the easy ones,
right?
Because you feel so good and you're cranking, right? It's the slow ones that, like, that's where you have courage. And those are the ones you should walk away with saying, yeah, it wasn't a good fast one, but I made it, and those are the ones you should take home to bed and really relish in and say, I got through that one. So, that's what I would tell all the runners is that, you were training for Boston maybe, and it didn't happen. Well, that all wasn't a waste. I mean, the idea is you're supposed to love this, and I hope everyone does. And so you're out there doing what you love to do anyways. You didn't waste anything. It's going to be back. You're going to be able to use what you worked hard at and use it as a foundation just to ramp up again. And we'll get her done down the road.
Dave, it has been such an honor to have you on this webinar today, and I appreciate it. And we wish you the best of the luck in September or in April of next year. Either way, it's going to be a fantastic race. Thanks so much again for being on the show.
Thanks for having me. All right.
Appreciate it. So for any of you who want to rewatch this, you can go to iwishiwasracing.com, or you can see our schedule for the next few webinars that are coming up. I don't know if we'll be as good as Dave, but we'll see. All right. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.